Welcome to Village Church Connections. I'm David Pavey. Billy Graham has died. I heard it first from a friend. It was February the 21st, 2018. At 99 years of age, William Franklin Graham had just left his home in Montreat, North Carolina, for the Celestial City. For years we had known this event would make headline news, and now it had happened. For me, it was somewhat an emotional moment, as Billy Graham felt like family. My mind flooded with memories. My respect for this inspirational preacher of the gospel goes back to perhaps 1950. I must have been 12 years old when a new book showed up in our home in Bristol, England, with a photo of this dashing young man on the cover, Bible in hand. I asked my father who he was. The answer was clear. He was a young American evangelist whom God was using in a very special way. We should pray for him. This was a year after the celebrated 1949 evangelistic tent meetings in Los Angeles, which had brought Billy Graham national attention in the USA. British Christians were following Billy's story with great interest. So imagine our delight when in 1954 we learned he was coming to London. Believers and their friends from all over Great Britain converged on Haringey Arena in the capital city. On the opening night, 12,000 people packed the arena, while hundreds more had to be turned away. Cliff Barrows led the 2,000-voice choir before George Beverly Shea sang, "I'd rather have Jesus than silver or gold." And then Billy came forward to preach, waving his large floppy Bible. He invited his audience to say with him, "God so loved the world." "God so loved the world," they echoed. Billy continued, "God is unchanging, holy and pure and righteous, and He is a God of love. We lost contact with God through our sin. There's only one way back, and that is through Jesus Christ. On the cross, Jesus Christ took your judgment. He will give you joy and peace and happiness. There's no way to know God apart from Jesus. I've seen gangsters receive Christ and become preachers. Alcoholics lose their taste for alcohol. I've seen prostitutes changed. Men and women in every walk of life changed." People responded by the hundreds, going forward to pray with a Christian counselor and commit their lives to Jesus. As the choir sang softly, "Just as I am without one plea, O Lamb of God, I come, I come." One day I joined a busload from Bristol for the 120-mile drive to Haringey Arena. As a 16-year-old, this experience made a huge impression on me. And later, Billy started relaying the meetings to many English cities, including Bristol, so I was able to sing in the local choir and serve as a counselor, memorizing Bible verses during training sessions to prepare me for the experience. The following year, 1955, Billy returned to England. I was there when he preached to 120,000 people at Wembley Stadium. Never will I forget the thrill as hundreds more turned their lives over to God. 2 years later, in May 1957, I traveled to the States to attend Bible school in Chicago. Billy Graham was then preaching to crowds of 18,000 in New York's Madison Square Garden, a mission that lasted for 4 months, by the way. Over the July 4th weekend, I joined 5 other young people to drive 800 miles to New York for 2 of the meetings. Billy preached on 2 Chronicles 7:14. "If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land." Over 6 decades, Billy conducted 417 campaigns in 185 countries and territories on the 6 continents. He preached to over 100 million in person and to more than 210 million if we include satellite feeds. He knew all 12 presidents from Eisenhower on and enjoyed friendship with most of them. In 1995, he was privileged to preach to the Queen in the royal family's private chapel. In 1986, after 60 years of preaching on the road and in diminishing health, Billy reluctantly retired from public evangelism. At that time, a magazine reporter asked him how he would like to be remembered. Replied Graham thoughtfully, "I would like to be remembered as a person who was faithful to God, faithful to my family, faithful to the Scriptures, and faithful to my calling. A man who dedicated his life to the Lord and never looked back." He was a model of integrity, too. In 6 decades of ministry, no one ever leveled a serious accusation of misconduct against him. Recognizing Billy as perhaps the most significant religious figure of the 20th century, national lawmakers accorded him the rare privilege, for a private citizen at least, of lying in honor in the Capitol Rotunda in Washington, D.C., before his burial at the Billy Graham Library next to his wife, Ruth, in Charlotte, North Carolina. Yes, Billy Graham touched my life, and news of his death brought back vivid memories of experiences that helped to shape who I am today. Perhaps his message and example touched your life in some way, too. Thank you for tuning in to Village Church Connections.